Greetings, gentle viewers, and welcome to the Rewatcher's Diary. Today, we're going to look into the Enneagram type of the fandom's favorite dad in tweed, the Chaos Mage Watcher with a punk rock past, Rupert Giles. Going into this, I thought that Giles was a type 5, given how he's introverted, very bookish, and has a minimalist wardrobe that consists mostly of tweed, and he doesn't really talk much about himself. However, most type 5s like to deep dive into things they want to know more about. More often than not, Giles always wants to be right. Whenever he's wrong about something, he doesn't look for evidence to see the other side. He likes to have things done a certain way, and he likes to think that things will always be a certain way. So basically, for this video, I'm going to be arguing that Giles is actually a type 1, the perfectionist. And if you think that I'm wrong, please comment. I'm open to changing my mind. But here's some comparisons between how Giles acts in Buffy that give evidence to him being a type 1. In the episode Welcome to the Hellmouth, Giles thinks that Buffy should have honed her senses instead of how she identified the vampire drift in an outdated manner. In the episode School Hard, he debates with Jenny about the night of St. Vigus, and Jenny tells him that he has to start reading self-published after 1066. In Jenny's mind, at least for a while, Giles was basically stuck in the Dark Ages. And in my personal opinion, I think Giles is a traditionalist at heart. The main difference between type 1s and type 5s is the fact that they are in different triads. 1s are in the gut triad, while 5s are in the head triad. Type 1s certainly think, but they are also people of action, and they're interested in ideas that lead to practical results. Type 5s are more theoretical, as they are in the head triad. They can ponder ideas, and they don't really care about practical applications to their theories. Even though Giles is usually someone who likes to do research, he's a very decisive person, and once he makes a plan of action, he always sees it through. During the Halloween episode in Season 2, when Willow tells Giles that they got their costumes at Ethan's, he goes straight there and, well, gets all Jack Bauer interrogation mode on his old boyfriend. Oops! I mean, old friend. The way that Giles acts isn't surprising because type 1s are in the gut triad, which have an underlying issue with anger, concern with justice, and seek autonomy. And I think there's a lot of ways that Giles shows all of these aspects of the gut triad. Type 1s represent anger. They repress their anger. Type 1s repress their anger in hopes of achieving perfection. In the case of Giles, he feels like he has to earn his freedom and autonomy. Type 1s in particular have a core weakness of resentment, aka constant frustration and dissatisfaction with themselves, with others, and the world at large. I mean, think about Giles' time as a young adult when he became Ripper. If you're someone whose family has been involved in the Watchers Council for generations and you have those same expectations forced upon you, I think a lot of resentment would build up. Giles' dream and restless is a good indicator of his type 1-ness. He reflects on his past sins in the moment where he's hypnotizing Buffy with the watch. He sees Buffy as a child. He harbors a secret desire for a family with Olivia, and literally sees Spike in black and white. The core desire and the core longing of a type 1 is to be good, to be a person of integrity, and their core fear is being corruptible. I think the reason Giles held on so hard to the principles that the Watchers Council taught him, why he abides by the rules to a certain extent, is because Giles' friend died during the Ripper days when Giles and his friends tried to summon the demon Igon. Giles' song in Once More with Feeling also expresses his core desire to be good. He wants to protect Buffy and help her as best he can, but he doesn't feel like he's enough by himself. He's constantly driven by this lie that it's not okay to make mistakes. And Giles is always haunted by what he feels like are his own personal mistakes throughout the show. One other difference, by the way, between a type 1 and a type 5 is that type 5s tend to be detached and more open to uncertainty. As pointed out in season 3's Helpless, Giles grows attached to Buffy to the point where the Watchers say that he acts like a father to her. And for the most part, for better or for worse, Giles is the team dad of the Scooby Gang. And besides all that, Giles decides in a very typical type 1 fashion that the right thing to do is to tell Buffy about the cruciamentum in the episode Helpless and cuts ties with the council, and that's out of a sense of justice for her. While it's true that this also looks like a type 5 going into their type 8 growth pattern, Giles' motivation comes from his love for Buffy and the desire to do the right thing for her. The last thing that can differentiate type 1s from type 5s is that type 5s can sometimes play devil's advocate. Let me ask you something. When was the last time that Giles ever played devil's advocate for literally anyone? Giles thought that Angel being in love with Buffy was poetic, sure. But once Angel became Angelus and a new vampire joins the Scooby Gang, very reluctantly so, well, this is just my very, very biased opinion. Giles wasn't really one to advocate for Spike being an asset, especially in season 7. Type 1s tend to be a lot more moralizing, with black and white thinking and very little room for nuance. Giles literally sees Spike in black and white in his dream during Restless. Let me just remind you of that, because I mentioned that. So with that out of the way, let's go into the wings of the Type 1, which are the Type 1 Wing 2 and the Type 1 Wing 9. I think that for the most part, Giles acts like a Type 1 Wing 2. There are instances where Giles acts more like a Type 1 Wing 9, especially during Season 6, but I think Giles' dominant wing is the Type 1 Wing 2. I'll go into both wings since Giles shows traits of both. The Type 1 Wing 9 are more introverted, and they have very objective thinking. The reason I don't think Giles is predominantly a 1 Wing 9, however, is because Giles is very set in his ways. He's not exactly the diplomatic type. I do think he leans on his 1 Wing 9 when he's alone, as 1 Wing 9s tend to numb out when dealing with stress. And I think, he could have been a 1 Wing 9 during his time in Season 4. Type 1 Wing 2, on the other hand, tend to be very, very meddling. They're a lot more action-oriented than Type 1 Wing 9s, but they struggle to go with the flow. Giles can be very self-righteous, and at worst, he can come off as a bit of a control freak. If you want evidence of that, just remember what he did and lies my parents told me. I don't want to spoil, but let's just say his actions in that episode were very patronizing, to say the least. Now for this next segment, I'm going into the paths of the Type 1 under stress, stagnation / blind spot / security blanket, and their growth pattern. Under stress, Type 1s act like a Type 4, which basically sums up the Ripper phase in a nutshell. As a Type 4, I can relate to the appeal of escapism. Giles embraced ritualistic dark magics and the punk rock scene, both of which are very Type 4 things to get into. But even without the Ripper phase, Giles under stress can act very moody and jealous with his resentment for others and his life in general, getting turned up to 11. I think this shows in A New Man, where he feels so left out, especially with Maggie Walsh seeming to take over Buffy's life as a mentor, that he decides to have a drink with Ethan. Type 1s in their stagnation path, or what I call a security blanket tendency, or what other people might call a blind spot, are when Type 1s act like the average to unhealthy side of a Type 7. This can also explain Giles' rebellious phase, or how he acted when he was under the influence of the band candy. Giles indulges in things that others would consider bad or wrong. Giles doesn't usually allow himself pleasures in life or any moment to really enjoy himself, so these moments of stagnation are very few and far between. In growth, type 1s act more like the positive, healthy side of a type 7. This shows when type 1s act a lot more spontaneous, playful, and free spirited, but without being destructive or flaky. Now, I hate to say this, but Giles didn't really show signs of his growth pattern as often as I wish. He definitely had it when he dated Jenny Calendar. I mean, he was open to going to a monster truck rally with her, or at least being at a monster truck rally with her as a surprise. And yes, Buffy is a type 7, but Giles acts very paternal towards her. He rarely, if ever, tries to adopt her approach to things. I think the only time that Giles decided to be spontaneous was the time that he was singing in the show, like in context, not like in the musical episode. Do you remember the only good scene in the episode Where the Wild Things Are, where Giles sang Behind Blue Eyes? And in the episode Restless, Giles decides to get on stage and sing the exposition song. I feel like those were moments of Giles embracing his inner type 7. So which subtype is Giles? I think that he is a self-preservation type 1. His energy is directed more at himself and his needs, which I think might explain why he gets mistyped as a type 5. Since Giles is a one-winged 2, he's still socially oriented to an extent, but most of his energy goes into taking care of his own needs first. He tends to worry a lot and measures himself to impossible standards. He also focuses on honing the skills he needs to get by in the world and desires order in his environment. He invests in things that are long-lasting, enduring, and certain, and that extends to the dogmas from the Watchers Council. But of course, there is a stopping point to that. Ultimately, I think Giles desires to do the right thing and be a good person to those around him. Does he achieve that? Well, I think he gets close, in my honest opinion. To sum up, Giles is a type 1, a perfectionist, predominantly preferring his type 2 wing, which makes him slightly more socially oriented, but at the same time, his instincts are very much rooted in his sense of self-preservation. Now, going forward, I'm hoping to make a video about the Enneagram types of Squid Game for December, and then we're going into the Avengers Enneagram types. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring that notification bell to know when I post a video next. Thank you for watching.